Thanks for joining us on The Word with Sumukhi and Damian Davis. The Word, a podcast to promote unity, diversity, and harmony. We have a guest on today.
The word is Orlando Powers. Orlando, how about you introduce yourself?
I would consider myself a hyphenate here. You know, I'm an actor, I'm a performer, I'm a photographer, a teaching artist, and just someone who wants to, keep myself in my sacred space, in my zone,
Yes.
to ameliorate my life is what I want to do right now.
Yes.
It's
And
the perfect guest for us.
oh, right.
Absolutely.
We want people like you, the ultimate hyphenates.
Yes.
Multidisciplinary, multi-talented.
This whole time has been obviously a time for everyone to redefine what it is they do in order to keep themselves in alignment with themselves, as opposed to taking on the world's issues.
And there's a lot of them.
I know that there are a lot of them. We seem to be inundated with a lot of the bad news, which for me, over this past year and a half, in fact, the past 4 years, I'm going to tell you, I have been internalizing a lot of the stuff that's out there, trying to keep myself updated on what's going on.
Yeah.
And what you find is that there's a lot of information out there that kind of keeps you in this fearful place, in this place of uncertainty, if you allow it.
Right.
I had been internalizing all of this, from Black Lives Matter to an administration, that was doing their thing. I'm not going to even call it good or bad. They were just doing their thing, and
Agents of chaos.
You are very kind.
Yeah. And it's all affected us in ways that we might not have even been conscious of. So in this past, especially year and a half, my sister had a stroke and was in the hospital.
Wow.
And that really exacerbated everything that was going on that I had just mentioned from all the externals. And it just compounded my frustration, my fear, my sadness to a point where I felt like my mental state wasn't as clear as it had been in the past because I was allowing myself to be led by all this information. There's as much good information out there and positive information out there as there is good. But somehow what sells the papers is the stuff that they, want people to find.
Yeah, exactly.
And we do.
Like the sensationalist stuff, the garbage, right?
Absolutely.
Garbage thinking.
Absolutely. And I definitely was one of those people who took it on as if it was my life or real or something other than just this external thing. I really was internalizing all of this to a point that it felt like my feelings and my emotions were unmanageable. I remember during COVID going up to the roof because obviously, things were closed down and stuff. And I would take that time to go up there and just kind of release, to kind of cry and I realized that in doing that, though, as much as it is a good thing to release and to cry, I was also attracting a certain energy to myself that kept me in that state, in this perpetual state.
Like in a lower vibration.
In a lower vibration, absolutely. And I didn't realize that for so long I had been doing that until I got to the point where I thought to myself, this is unsustainable. I cannot continue to live my life in a place of fear and worry because of the things that I'm taking into my body and into my mental state, causing my emotional state to really just be at an all-time low. So I really took all of this into consideration before I made the change. In fact, that's what precipitated the change, was that I was in a state that really I was not enjoying. I was not enjoying my life.
And I think, it's something to really say right now that a lot of people are in the same shoes, right? And like part of the problem with it, and it compounded, right, is that you are basically voicing how a lot of people have been feeling, like en masse, kind of throughout the United States, throughout the world.
I looked at it like a blueprint. I held up a blueprint of my life that at the time was filled with negative emotions. And I didn't want to feel that. Obviously, I mean, who does really? But in doing so and holding up this unwanted blueprint versus what I know, and what I know is right for me and the way that I would like to feel, I regained control of my life by cutting through that noise, that maybe I can help other people cut through the noise.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
We're all really looking for that. I mean, I can say that for myself, that I've also been working super hard on staying on the positive side of things versus, like, rolling into a negative spiral or negative loop in the mind.
Yeah.
Yes.
While there's a lot of negativity swirling around, that's real, but trying to stay positive or stay balanced in changing, churning times.
That's right. And Christina, if you don't mind me asking you a question, how have you been doing that? How have you been finding your
Well,
center or that balance?
what I've been doing, which is, in yogic scripture, it's called Patipakshabhavanam. Iti Patipakshabhavanam.
Hmm.
And literally, when your mind goes into something very negative and into a downward spiral, and you do "woe is me," you do the opposite. So it's like, let's think of something like really bad. Like my mind will go into, "Wow, that really bad thing happened to me," and instead I go, "Actually, it was really great. That was really great. Why was that great? Let me have gratitude towards that." Like,
Look at that. Oh, my favorite word, gratitude. Yes.
yeah, I'm like, "No, no, thank you for that." It's like, "Thank you for doing that," like screaming in my face. Thank you for that because, it's like, because you screamed in my face, I walked away from you and into something better, or I did something better for myself.
Yes, instead of engaging it and
And
taking
then,
it on.
it's like, then I you never have to scream in my face ever again. It's not like you go, "Oh, screaming in my face is a good thing." No, the good part of it is that I walked away from it and into something better, and I'm grateful for that.
Christina,
Mm.
wow, you hit it right on the head. Instead of engaging in it, and taking it on, and staying in that state, keeping yourself in that angry state while engaging that, you're doing yourself a disservice, I really feel. And I love the way that you redirect the energy of someone screaming in your face to get to a point of gratitude. Because you're keeping yourself in alignment with a certain vibration that when you stay in gratitude and more things that create this gratitude in you will come your way, as opposed to if you're trying to get back because your ego wants to get back at that person for screaming at you. Walking away is the best thing you could do. One of the things that I had done for many years, for almost 15 years, was helping children as a teaching artist to become aware of their feelings.
Wonderful.
As much as I was helping the kids, I was helping myself because knowing your feelings, it's helpful because it helps you to understand where you would actually like to be. So if you're in a state of depression,
Yeah.
really feeling that depression and being grateful that you can feel, first of all, any feelings can help you then to decipher where you want to go from there. So if you don't like the state of being depressed, what can you do for yourself to help you get out of that
And I
state?
think, I think one of the things that you just called out, which is interesting, is that teaching the kids how to even identify
Yes.
the actual feeling, right?
Christina, can I tell you both that when we would go in to do our first assignment, which a residency could be, is for the whole year.
Hmm.
So, you see a lot of the resistance on the kids' faces and everything when you're walking into the room and their body language says one thing. And then, you eventually get to the point where you gain their trust and, you start to produce some things. This work that I was doing is based in drama therapy. So I would use my drama in order to help kids. Because with using characters, you kind of help the kids to understand that the feelings are there, but they're working to talk about the feelings through the characters as opposed to themselves. There's a certain detachment.
Like, what's an example of a character?
Well, for example, if we were teaching the emotion shame, I would work in pairs. So you and I would work, Christina, and we would create a scene before the class that would show a person dealing with shame.
Hmm.
And we would say, that's the feeling that we want the kids to identify. So we would have one character be the one who is in a shameful state. Their body language says one thing, what they say is another thing, uh, giving clues to the kids to let them know that, oh, she's feeling something. What is it that she's feeling? And so after we do our scene, which ends in conflict, we ask the kids to kind of talk about the behaviors versus the feelings.
Okay.
And yeah, we keep them on track because sometimes when you say, okay, how was this person behaving? And then they would say, oh, they felt shame, they felt embarrassed. And I said, well, that's the feeling, not the behavior. What let you know that other than what they said, they were feeling shame? Oh, well, her shoulders were slumped over. She was holding her hands to her face. Excellent. That's the behavior. What led you know that she was feeling shameful? Well, the way that she was evading questions and the way that she was really being kind of shy about the next thing that was going to come out of her mouth. So then we know after assessing the questions that they might have been feeling shameful.
Well, that's good. Adults might need to take that class.
Well, I'm telling you, this is why it helped me
Yeah,
also, because we never had classes like that that helped you to talk about feelings.
yeah.
In fact, most kids, they only know happy, sad, angry,
That's true
depressed,
because,
you know?
it's really like, you're giving, kids I mean, people a vocabulary for their emotions.
Yes,
And then people have
absolutely.
to learn, the different words for it. Because if you're trying to express it, you're gonna hit with, "Well, how do you feel?" "I don't know."
That's right. That's
I
right.
don't know because they don't have a word of or an emotional vocabulary, an actual vocabulary to express or talk about their emotions.
And one of the
Sounds
reasons that I mention
wonderful.
these feelings and this thing, Damien, is because we all need to know how we feel.
Yes.
And like you said, most adults, a lot of adults, we don't know how we really
Yeah.
feel. If you can name it, give yourself that vocabulary to be able to name it, then you can move on from there. But if you don't have the words to express the feelings, then you may be a little more stuck than you would if you were able to name it.
Well, but I do think in that kind of context of like of a child understanding the energy of shame,
Yes.
even down to the point of understanding when it's applicable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm definitely ashamed of, stealing somebody's lunch or something, right?
Mhm.
Like the things
Right.
that are, yeah.
That's right.
But
I think that's the difference between that word shame, between self shame and knowing what's right and wrong and feeling ashamed
Yes.
that you did not maybe do the right thing,
Yes.
versus the whole cancel
Yeah.
culture of the world where they're shamed by big groups of people
Yeah.
that don't even know them,
No.
and they're shamed that way. But
with cancel culture, for example, like it's I I I can actually see both sides of it. It's like,
Oh,
yes.
yes,
absolutely. Because I feel like
yes,
the reason why cancel culture is, um, frowned upon or argued about now is because cancel culture used to be going one way and attacking one set of people. It used to be lopsided. And then I think the other side started canceling out other people, and, both sides didn't like it. So now it's bad because people have gotten crazy about the things that now cancel people. Like, you can't even do like, you gotta be
yes.
a messiah to not get canceled, and even then, the messiah might get canceled, the savior might get canceled.
Well, but I have been, it's like, to talk about the ex-president, it's like of the United States.
Mhm.
I've been very happy not to hear from him.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Personally, whether or not he should have been, I can canceled everywhere, right? It becomes a, okay, yeah, I feel better. Whew, I don't have to hear from that. It becomes, our own choices in so many ways to say, I'm not going to listen to that. It's like what you said earlier, Orlando, where it's like the
yes,
news was so negative, and it's like, okay, I'm going to try to unplug myself from that, which I think is like,
yes.
how did you do that? How did you go from kind of being plugged into the negative and then moving away from it?
That's a good question. I was feeling so bad, so badly about myself within the context of what was going on and how I was perceiving and taking on these things that were external, to the point where it made me stop and say to myself, this cannot continue.
Yeah.
This cannot continue to be my life.
Mm.
I am not this kind of
Yep.
person. I don't like the way that I feel because I'm somewhat depressed, coupled with the thing that was happening with COVID. I'm not happy. And so just by acknowledging my feeling, that was the first step. The second step, I didn't like the feeling, so I was controlling my stimuli. The stimulation that came to me, meaning not reading the newspaper,
Mhm.
not going online and reading, what that blurb is to make you draw yourself right to that
Yep.
page, and read what it is they're trying to sell you or not sell you on. The first thing I would say was acknowledging the feeling. The second thing I would say is controlling the stimulation that came to me. That's what helped me to kind of reinvigorate the state that I am normally enjoying being into, creating a more stable emotional balance for myself, including not just emotional, but physical also. I was not in my body. It was almost as if I was hovering outside of my body in this emotional state.
When you go in and it's like, when you step back and you said, "Okay, I'm gonna stop doing this," then what were some things that helped you get to that next level?
Well, I needed to have a plan for myself because it was fine for me to say, I don't want this. But then what was I going to replace all this negativity and this stuff with?
Mm.
And so that was the question that was posed from just me thinking about how am I going to get myself out of this state? I realized that because I had so much going on in my head and that I needed to glean what it is that was going to help me get all of this out is clearing out these cobwebs in my head, clearing out
Mm.
all of that stuff. I met up with a woman who became my mentor in helping me to develop a practice, a personal development practice that really helped me to literally clear out all this negativity from my
Can
head.
you share the name of the woman or, or no? If you
Absolutely. Her name is Tara Nicole Kirk.
Okay.
Tara Nicole Kirk. Yeah. She's a lady that I really was calling on and I didn't even know it.
Mm.
In this state that I was in, where I was basically holding my arms out to the sky,
Mm.
basically, I need guidance.
Yeah.
I need guidance. I don't know how to clear my head. I know that that's what I need to do, but how can I do that effectively? How can I clear my head out and do it in a way that is going to help me to advance myself and my state of being? And when you open yourself up to these questions, you got to be prepared for the answers because they come to you. What you
Mm.
have to do is you have to ask. I wasn't asking. I was just living in this state of perpetual frustration and depression and whatever other emotions that I didn't enjoy. And once I stopped, named the feeling, and realized that what I had in my head was all this stuff still swirling around in my head, I just asked my higher self to help me find a way to then clear it out, because then after I clear it out, then I can move on. But until then, I needed clarity. And sure enough, I was looking online and I saw this video clip of a woman who was seemingly speaking my language. Everything that I was not thriving with or wanting in my life, she was naming it. It was as if
Mm.
she came to me specifically to let me know that she was the one that was going to help me.
When
And
the student is ready, the teacher will come.
yes, there we go. Wow, that's a prime example of that, okay?
Yeah.
It took me a couple of days to kind of think about it. All I knew though was that in my soul I felt she was the one that was going to help me to do this. And so yeah, so Tara came along and really named a lot of the things that were unspoken in my mind. And one of the things that I found was limiting me. Well, actually, two things. The type of personality that I am or used to have that was not serving me well. And it's this sort of rumination, you know,
Ruminating.
thinking,
So just churning the same
yes,
thought over and over again?
over and over again. Yes. Whether it was a situation of how I could have handled it or how I felt, and replaying it in your mind and just keeping yourself in this state. One of the things that I realized that I was doing was ruminating to a point where I was being stuck. I literally felt stuck because of this ruminating that I was doing.
They say this about, like, introverts, right? Introverts will take a thought and then, like, loop it in the mind a bit. So, I feel like everybody has both, no matter what. We're introverts and extroverts, but that everybody
Depending on the situation, yeah.
it's like it could be how you replay something maybe years and years after, right? Like, it's like the ways that people ruminate can be different, but everybody does it.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. It might not be the main attribute of your personality type, but I do agree with you. I do
Yeah,
agree with
that's
you that
true.
everybody ruminates
On
to a certain
Yeah,
degree.
on different things, but if your personality is, well,
Yes.
because when you're saying that, ruminating all those things you were listing, I was like, "That sounds
Mhm.
like me now." Maybe I maybe I need to give this woman a call.
Right,
Um,
right.
All of us. It's like exactly that, Damien. Like, it's like, I watch my mind replay something and I'm like, "That's nice. That happened, like,
I hate
20 years
that.
ago."
Right, look at that. Yes,
Hate
yes.
that.
To the I, Christina, I'm so right there with you.
And
Sometimes
feel
I
the
would go in
emotions and the shame and bad of that moment fresh
you know.
20 years later. It's
Yes,
like, "Really?"
yes.
Like
Like
it's
it's
Like it's
happening
happening
now.
happening
now.
Yeah.
now.
Crazy.
It
Crazy.
really, really is
Oh, what was
crazy.
the second thing? Sorry.
But no, that's no worries. The second thing was really finding that my inner critic was holding me back.
Mm,
That inner critic that would critique all the outside stuff in the world and consider it bad or whatever and make it a belief. Because, basically the thoughts that you keep, you make it a belief. So I was believing all the
wow.
things that were going on
Okay.
out there and feeding that inner
Mhm.
critic in me to a point that was making my inner critic the star of the show. Now, we all have an inner critic. We all have that thing in us that protects us, especially when we were young, which is where it came
Mhm.
from, to help us navigate our lives in a way that keeps us safe. But there comes a point when that inner
Yes.
critic becomes a hindrance to you. Okay, so you've lived your life and you know how to live your life now, but that inner critic comes in and say, "Oh no, that's bad." It keeps you stifled. It keeps you in a place. It doesn't allow for more growth, for an evolution.
Oh, yeah, it's like a non-evolving critic.
That's right.
So it's like it's so as you're evolving and growing and developing, that inner critic is still operating on, let's say, an old set of understandings or maybe your
Yes.
previous chapter. It might be saying, "Oh, this is bad. This is wrong." It's like, "No, no, no. We have new information." Um,
Both of you are, creative types, right? Like, that's where the inner critic can really get us
Yes.
as creative
oh yeah, oh
people.
yeah,
Especially
especially as
as
creatives,
creatives. Okay.
especially.
And you learn as an actor or musician, when if you have an audition and things, they're critiquing you. So they're critiquing you, then you're critiquing you, and there you go.
Mm.
You've got that critic going and keeping
And
you,
there's a benefit
you
to
know,
that particular critic. I mean, there's
there
there's an
is.
absolute plus
And there
to
was,
that.
especially,
Yes. Mhm.
that it did serve you in the past. But I know that for me
Yes.
specifically, it wasn't serving me. I was
Mm.
calling myself a late bloomer for many years. And I think that that was a term that maybe my inner critic came up with because it allowed me to be late with the things that I wanted to create in my life, but have an excuse. Oh, I'm a late bloomer, so that's okay. That phrase, I really turned it around, and I do feel the opposite of that now. There was a professor at NYU that, with this company that I worked with, teaching these drama therapy techniques. His name is Robert Landy, an amazing
Mhm.
drama therapist. And we would often have workshops and things with him, and he would talk about how humans hold on to their traumas and their beliefs to a point that really keep them perpetually wanting to replay that because that's just the human for some reason or another.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and he had mentioned how, for example, an animal like a deer gets hit by a car. Okay, that's a very traumatic experience. And if it doesn't die, what it does is it shakes its body to a point where it releases the trauma right then and there. Now, it still might be hurt and it still might obviously need to heal from whatever wounds it got, but it won't hold on to the trauma like humans do.
Mhm.
We hold on to the trauma. It will not remember
Mm.
that car hitting it as far as the trauma is concerned because it's shaking to release the trauma, release the muscular tension that was held within that trauma, to burn excess adrenaline and calm the nervous system to a
Mm.
natural state, thereby managing their stress level. So if a deer can do it, I know I can do it, you know?
That's really, really amazing, and that's the power.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what we're talking about here is my ability, is my shaking. This is the technique. Finding the feeling that you don't
Mm.
like to be in, feeling that state, really feeling it, controlling the stimulation that comes into your body is part of that shaking that I consider shaking for me. Getting into your body, as I mentioned earlier,
Wow.
really getting into you. And what does that mean? And maybe, you can speak to this, Christina, because you do yoga. So I think, people who are yogic, for me, I feel like they're very much in their bodies. There's a certain spiritual aspect to it and a physical aspect to it. What do you say, Christina?
I agree with you
Mm.
on all of those points. It's a very yoga takes it to another dimension as well, right? Because we see people as spirit first in human form, not human forms with spirits. So
Mhm.
always, it's like if you really
Oh, wow.
study the Yoga Sutras and if you understand yogic philosophy, spirit, infinite being, incarnate physical form, temporary, but spirit, infinite being is infinite. So,
Mhm.
we
Hmm.
even take it to that level where it's like we will release traumas from other lifetimes.
Look at that. I love
That's
that.
that next level stuff. And it's like when you say it's like future lives and past lives, all one.
We are infinite beings. That's a term that I'm very familiar with because not a lot of people know or maybe even believe in it. Our spirits, they continue,
Mm.
or at least I feel that.
I'm getting enlightenment and lessons just from hearing you talk, Orlando, because you said something else about the late bloomer. I'm like, is he talking about me? And I'm like, man, like that, I've never looked at it that way. And the beautiful thing is you also recognized once because you're saying I need to shake these things off and get these things out and empty yourself, you actually had the wisdom to go, but I have to replace it with something. I can't just be shedding stuff and being empty. What am I going to replace it with?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's right. Because I know how I wanted to feel. I just didn't know how to get there effectively.
Hmm.
So yes, it was about,
Yeah.
finding what the replacements were going to be that was going to make my life much different than what it was
Mm.
while I was ruminating and the depression and all of that
Yeah.
Brilliant.
The major thing was getting a mentor to kind of help guide and facilitate this new beginning for me. I definitely felt that
Mm.
when I found this woman, it wasn't as if she was saying things that I didn't understand that made me want to go with her. It was because she was saying what she was saying. I wasn't looking for someone to give me some magical information that I had no idea about. I knew that what was going
Mm.
to draw me in was something that I deep down in my soul already knew but just needed to remember and be reminded of.
Oh, beautiful.
And
That's gorgeous.
yes,
That's beautiful.
yes.
That's
And
beautiful.
that's exactly what
Yeah.
Tara did for me. It brought me to a place of remembrance so that
Wonderful.
I could integrate that pureness of myself and that desire to want to make some effective changes. For people who aren't of the spiritual chat or whatever, I'm always conscious of everyone so that everyone can glean something because sometimes people get, really scared of the, spirituality, even though we're all spiritual beings.
Absolutely.
But but the word
Yes.
here is agency, the action or intervention to
Mhm.
produce a particular effect in your life. Something different than what you had wanted in the past. That's having agency for yourself,
Isn't
you
that I mean,
know?
that's a really profound
Wow.
word too, having agency, because it's like it really speaks to the power of
Agency.
choice. Because there's that thing, right? Like people feel like they don't have any choice and so they're stuck. And then, it's like when you become it's like the power of agency. I think you could really go into that and say that then it's so self-empowering. You can speak for yourself. Like
Yes.
you are your own greatest agent, although we love our agents, no harm, no harm.
That is true.
Thank you for getting us jobs. We love our agents. Mwah, 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 kisses, kisses, casting agents, etcetera. But to have your own like, your own agency within so that,
Right.
your agent can actually represent you as this powerful being.
And you're the only one that can do it, you guys. We're the only ones that can really change our lives and put us on the path with our higher selves and what it is we
Yes.
want to do in this life. Because we're here to do things, whether we know it or not. And those things, expand.
Yes.
In fact, this show
Absolutely.
expands the conversation. We're going to be different than when we began this conversation.
Absolutely. While it's happening, the things you said already. When you told me about your journey, I was inspired. Like you had those projects of some
Yes.
animation thing and worked on a song and, doing all these things, all that energy and your light was actually you know, affecting me because it was lighting things on me as well. I guess
Yes.
that's what
Yes.
inspiration is. It's
It
light.
it's
Yes.
infectious. It's like, there's
Absolutely.
yeah, the creativity in you then inspires others to
Yes,
create.
that's so true. So it was as if I
Mhm.
became a scientist for my own life, really trying to figure out what it is that was going to put these places, these keys into the right position
Yeah.
for me to then release that old stuff, to shake off. I had an acting teacher who would always ask us, how do you feel right now? She said, I need you to ask yourself this all the time because knowing how you feel is going to help you understand where you would like to be
Mhm.
in relation to the current feeling that you're in. In the context of an acting class, though, it's good to know how you feel because it relates to your character. So if your character is feeling angry and you're feeling real quite joyful, then well, you got to get yourself to a place where
Mm.
you're feeling closer to what the character is feeling. And it's the same thing. It's the same sort of blueprint for life. If you feel a certain way that you don't enjoy feeling, well, knowing how you feel is going to help you to get to that other place so that you can get to that place, as Christina said, of gratitude for being able to be aware of your feelings and being able to
Yes.
put yourself in a different state. So, but this acting teacher, she hated if somebody said they feel fine. If somebody new came into the class and she said, "How do you feel?" and you said fine, she would say, "Oh, okay. So you feel fucked up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. Is that what you're feeling? Because that's what fine is to me." You
You know,
know, she
that's
said,
the
"That's
other
not a
you
feeling."
you really touch on something that happens, I think, in yogic spiritual communities or, like, kind of like Damien and I had a conversation about spiritual bypass, and I think in that bypass sense, it's like, "Everything is good. All is good. All is good. What I feel is all is good."
Right. Hmm.
That's a massively aggressive hatred of fine, especially that acronym.
It really was. It really was. She created an acronym for it, so I was never fine in her class.
She's like,
Okay.
"What's your trigger?" "My trigger is fine." Oh my god.
Oh man. But I like what you said also, Christina, in that, the whole I feel great and everything is fine and everything is, wonderful and stuff. That's not where
Mm-mm.
I want to be either.
It's not.
Because just because I found a place that of alignment for myself, or at least know how to stay in my alignment, doesn't mean that I'm not going to feel all the other feelings that I might not want to feel.
Exactly.
It doesn't eradicate feelings. Okay. In fact, it maybe even helps you to be able to deal with each and every feeling that you have in a way that's productive for yourself.
Yeah. You would probably feel more, but also not have it get away from you. So it's like increased
That's right.
feeling, elevated feeling without falling apart or exploding.
That's right.
I
Absolutely.
love this topic. I love this, like, it's like how you've gone from a very difficult state into like these steps to really having a much more expanded space to be in and having a mentor. I think that mentorship is really beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really is. I appreciate you saying that because it's true. We need each other.
Yes.
We're all here, whether we know it or not. Everybody is here to help one another in some way, shape, or
Yes.
form. I really do believe that, whether you know them or not. And it's not into a point where you're using so much as having resources to get what it is
Mm.
you want out of life. There's a certain satisfaction in knowing that everything that I want, all I have to do is ask for it. All we have to do is ask for it, okay? Because that or something better
Yes, the
is going
ask
to
and it
come
shall
to
be
us.
given. And what I thought was
Mhm.
amazing was,
Yes,
how you were saying you were out there really saying, you're aware that you needed to empty yourself. You're aware that you need to shed these things. And you knew you weren't looking for some magic answer or some magic thing that you didn't know
that's right.
or was going to discover some secret. It's like, no, no, no. I just need to help point along and walk along the path. It's not out there. It's in here. It's in me.
It's in it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and, to
Yes,
know all that while you're on that and to call your own teacher to you
that's right.
is amazing.
Yes,
You heard her talking and she was speaking you. Almost gives you goosebumps. I mean, you know it to be
yes.
true, but to hear it in practice in someone's life experience, and it's not just a nice saying, it's actually true.
You're your own mentor. You become your own mentor. I don't expect to have her for the rest of my life so much as to be able to direct using my own intuition. And we all know that when you don't follow your intuition or that gut instinct
Yeah.
that tells you to do this and you do the opposite, what happens? You know,
That is incredible. I think that's a thing for our listeners and for ourselves to really learn from this is that to not really give into like magical thinking either, right? You have a very practical way of saying, okay, this isn't going to be this magic wand, or I'm not always going to go to this one person.
Or something unknown or some
right,
new
right.
Getting ourselves out of
secret.
a funk, out of like, like really negative states, is something that's accessible to everyone. I think that's where I'm like,
Yes,
it's not just special voodoo.
And like I said, you decided Your spirit was like, this can't continue, and we need to not be in this
Exactly.
place. And you didn't have to have all the answers. You didn't have to understand anything, but intrinsically the spirit and the soul of the situation was, I cannot be here. This is not working.
That's right. I just wanted to also mention that one of the things that I had done to alleviate the rumination,
Mhm.
to get it out of my head, was to get it down on paper so that I do not have to have this swirling around in my head. Okay, it's something that I obviously wanted to think about. It's not as if I'm going to just throw that away. Let's just take it because it came from me, and
Yeah,
out of my head. It's not necessary, but I'm going to put it down on paper so that I get it out of my head, and there it
that's
is.
brilliant.
All right, let's move
Yeah,
on. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
that's
Yeah.
good.
There is,
That's very
and I
good.
think, it's like what I'd love to hear, like, are some of your creative projects, Orlando, that you've been
Yes, because
inspired.
he has creative plans. I only heard a little bit.
Well, so my photography is always something that I'm always seeking to develop and evolve and things. And as Damien knows, I have a print studio called No, where we create artwork, patterns, and prints for fashion companies. That's something that I'm always doing. Damien knows I'm always outside after work, especially with my camera. And my specialty is kind of doing some these light photos where I create sort of abstract light patterns with colors mixed in to create a certain effect that people have been really enjoying.
Yes.
So I'm focusing on that.
That's like, just even your description of it sounds visually stunning.
Thank you. I'm also writing an animated series.
Blew
Yes,
my mind.
that's on my plate. Hopefully, if I have the pleasure of coming on again,
Absolutely.
later on or whatnot, I will have finished and tell you, everything and give you maybe even where you can see it. But right now, that's a project that I'm working on right now. I'm also taking a screenwriting class because I really want to really just enhance my writing, and because I have some other ideas for short films and things
Yes.
like that. And
Ooh.
so basically, I'm just gathering all this information right now, putting it into little projects. I'm also creating a conceptual photo project for myself. So, I'm I'm just doing.
I love it, I love it, and there's I think that's the joy of creativity, and I think that's just, like, when you stop all that depressive thinking, when you stop all the limitations, it's like, look at all the stuff we can
Yes.
do and what you're doing. That's tremendous, like, creativity, unrestricted creativity.
What would you tell people, the listeners in general, with your journey and the unrestrictive life, in summation? Like, what would you advise or want to let people come away with?
Well, there was one other little factor that I
Mhm.
wanted to mention also, and then I'll definitely,
Okay.
touch upon your question. And that was, and the last thing after intuition was act.
Mm.
You know, perform what it is, because we can all be in our heads and wish for wonderful things to
Mhm.
happen, but the fact is that you really have to act upon these things that your higher source is calling you to
Yes.
do. And if you're listening to your higher source, your higher calling, your that voice inside you, that it's not the inner critic that is the one that's going to propel you forward, it's basically to do what you have to do to change your
Yeah.
circumstances. And so part of it is what we had just
Yeah.
put out there with, if you're a ruminator, get it out on the page and out
Mhm.
of your head, giving credit to, what's the name of the author now? I'm forgetting her name. Um, Julia Cameron
Oh, The
for um,
Artist's Way.
for her book, The Artist's Way. That's right.
Is that the book that everybody started?
Yes.
Yes, yes. Damien and I have joked about that everybody
Or or
has started that book and have never finished it. Oh yeah, I know that book. Yeah, the morning pages.
it was
It's
actually
the book that what's funny is that the other day I went to Book People, this great bookstore in Austin, and I hadn't been in a while and because of COVID, and I walked in, um, and I saw The Artist's Way, and I'm like, "I almost bought it." Like, "No." You still have that
and and
somewhere.
and it was Orlando who actually started that because we talked about it. He's like, so have you yes, so have you finished that book? I was like, "No."
That's the question, have
He's
you
like, "Have you
finished?
finished it?" I was like, "No,"
Oh
and he started
god.
laughing, I'm like, "What?" He's like, "No one finishes that book." I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yes, no one finishes it."
Because the artist finds their way. It's so good. That book is so good that you find your way
There
just
we
to the
go,
first
exactly.
Oh, also to tag on to what you're saying about listening and acting and making sure to act upon, what the direction of things is. I could say I was talking
Yes.
to a friend of mine about this. My whole reason for coming to New York, because he was like, "How did you just leave Boston and go to New York?" And I was like, actually, I was really directed and led to it. It's like my life kind of you hear the call of the road or God or direction, however you want to couch it, and it says you are to go here. And I didn't have great experiences in New York City because I visited New York in the 80s and the 90s, and it wasn't
Right.
pretty then. So I had bad experiences, but something said, "You're going to New York." And I knew it wasn't from me because mentally or whatever, I would have never picked New York City. You're going to New York. That's where your path is.
Isn't that the weirdest thing too? It's like when we think about,
Yeah,
like, how awful New York
because
was
especially
Mm.
the 70s and 80s,
and
70s, New
how
York was trash. Oh, yeah.
now it's turned into, like, paradise.
Yeah, really is.
I have to tell you, yes. I mean, it has a whole different vibe now, you guys. I mean, with the restaurants, especially down on the
Oh,
Lower
yeah.
East Side, being these restaurants have their outdoor seating and things like that, and it feels like a
Yeah,
different town. It
yeah.
really does. There's something about.
Well, and that's the strangest and wildest thing about New York City. Like, I feel like that city, destroys and rebuilds itself, like, in the blink of an eye. Like,
Yes.
it's other,
You know, I've been, just thinking about that last question that you had said. I feel basically that we just need to be willing to let our intuition
Mhm.
guide us, and then be willing to follow that
Yes.
guidance.
Answer the call. Answer the call.
isn't that it? That's what
Yes.
got you out of Boston to New York City. It's like, even if it was like
It's basically obeying. It's to obey the call. Like, the call comes, you could ignore it, but, it's like, "Alright, I need to go there." And when I got to New York, you know, kicked the kicked the stuffing at me, it just kicked the shit out of me everywhere. I mean, it was hard. It beat on me for a while. So it's like,
Mm,
I was supposed to be there. I did belong there. I was supposed to, go. But at the same point in time, it's beating me round after round. And I'm wondering, like, why am I here? I was told to come here. I know I'm supposed to be here. Why?
mhm.
Like, I'm not here to get, like, I know I was here for a reason. Was it wrong? But, eventually, my life completely changed. It would be a very different life. I'd be a very different designer or creative if I hadn't come here and answer that. And, you're directed to some place, but that doesn't mean it's gonna be easy. It's still you could still suffer in it, but you're on your way to where you're supposed to be, if that makes any sense. It's like a
Yeah.
direction, at least for that.
Mhm, mhm.
it's an artist suffering kind of place, right? Like, it's like
Oh, yeah, no, it's
and
definitely
and there's a bit of a struggle, like, when you're really finding your
mm,
creative way, but that New York has a supportive
yes.
system. There's, like, there's someone who's gonna catch you if you fall
As
in New
rough as it
York,
can be
Right,
sometimes,
and
as rough and
right.
as cold as it can be, there are those who also are like, "Yeah, I understand, your struggle or situation or what everyone's trying to become."
yeah, there's a greater compassion to it that I've always understood,
Which doesn't sound
Mhm.
right in context of New York's reputation, but it is true.
It is. I really feel that part of the secret to this new development that we can all take part in is that we just need to be willing to, let, as I mentioned, our intuition guide us. And then we
Yes.
just have to be willing to follow what that guidance tells us and then act. Because that, for me, was basically the steps that I took to get to the point where I am now. Who knows where we can be when we breathe into that, quiet our minds, and start listening
Yeah.
to ourselves rather than all of the noise and the junk that's out there, the social media and all the stuff that really kind of keeps us away from who we really are and who we would like to be.
it really is. Thank you so
That's
much, Orlando,
beautiful.
for joining us today.
Oh my goodness. I thank you both so much
Yes.
for having me on the show.
It's a
I
pleasure.
feel like there's even more that we could have talked about, but I think that what we did glean though was a nice nugget of truth that we can at least
We
nibble
can
on
do
for
it.
a while until we expand the conversation more.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, and for all of us, right, like, through COVID, this has just been necessary. It's like, how do we all get ourselves out of this
That's
negative
right.
space?
That's
Absolutely.
right. You two are
Yeah.
awesome. I really appreciate you both. And Damien, thank you for introducing me to Christina.
Thank you.
She's
Thank you.
everything
Yeah. The
and more.
special need to meet the special.
You know.
Yes.
By the way, Christina, I believe Damien had mentioned that you are Filipina. Is that
Yes,
that's
ako
come
ay
from?
Pilipina. Ako
Yes.
ay Pilipina.
Nah. Can I tell you?
Ako ay
Yes.
Pilipina.
Sing it, girl. Yes, yes.
Ako
I'm gonna put
ay
that in the episode.
Pilipina.
I grew up with so many Filipino friends, when I was growing up
In Guam.
in
In
Guam.
Guam.
That's right.
When I was not in Guam.
And I have an affinity. I love the culture,
They're musical people. Of course you
That's
love
right.
them.
That's right.
Filipinos are musical.
Well, we have a deep connection to Puerto Ricans. We really do.
Yes, I know. Exactly. And Afhal kita, so we'll keep it at that.
Mahal kita, hindi to bola.
That's the love.
Mahal ko kayo. Salamat po.
Salamat.
Yeah. I love you all and thank you. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you both as well.
Thank you, yes.
Thanks for joining us on The Word with Sumukhi and Damian Davis.